Hello guys, good morning. You are welcome to my YouTube channel, the Explicit Tutorials. As you all know, my name is Coach Joseph Orobosa or Mr. Explicit. Please, as you watch this video, endeavor to subscribe, like, share and comment. It's been a while I uploaded the content on my YouTube channel because of one reason or the other, but I'm back. So, in today's class, we shall be discussing a topic called cell. As you all know, cell is one of the fundamental topics in the world of biology. So this morning we'll be looking at the word cell. Now biology, as you all know, is gotten from two Latin words called bios and logos. Bios and logos. Bio means life and logos means study. Alright? So therefore biology is the study of what? Life. Or it is the study of what? Living things. That is all the introductory part to biology. So in biology we have different branches. We have botany, meaning the study of plants, then zoology, the study of animals, anatomy, the study of the internal structures of an organism. We now have cardiology, the study of the heart, ophthalmology, the study of the eye, so on and so forth. However, these are the three major branches of biology, alright? We now have genetics. Genetics means the study of genetic what? Materials, and how these materials are transmitted from their parents to their offsprings, okay? And the father of genetics is Gregor Mendel, alright? Gregor Mendel is the father of genetics. So this is just a brief introduction to what we are doing today. So in today's class, we shall be looking at the term on the board, cell. The study of the cell is called cytology. The study of the cell is called cytology, okay? The study of the cell is called cytology, or the scientific study of the cell is called what? Cytology. Now, on a broad note, we have two types of cells. We have two types of cells. Now, what are the two types of cells? They are the prokaryotic cells, alright, the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell. So, the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell are the two types of cells that we have. You don't say plant cell and animal cell. No, these are the two types of cells that we have. Now, this prokaryotic cell is possessed by, let me remove this one for now. Okay, now this prokaryotic cell is possessed by viruses and bacteria. Viruses and bacteria possess the prokaryotic cell. Now, what makes this cell prokaryotic? It is prokaryotic because it lacks a well-defined nucleus. Because it lacks a well-defined nucleus. If the nucleus is not well-defined, it therefore means that we call it a nucleoid. A nucleoid, alright? A nucleus that is not well-defined is called a nucleoid. The prokaryotic cells or the prokaryotes lack a well-defined nucleus. Because the nucleus is not well-defined or formed, we say it is called a nucleoid. A nucleoid, okay? Now, in man, okay, from Kingdom Protista down to Kingdom Animalia, they have a well-defined nucleus. They have a well-defined nucleus. If they have a well-defined nucleus, it means that their genetic materials are situated in the nucleus. But in bacteria, for example, they lack a well-defined nucleus. Therefore, their genetic materials are found in the nucleoid. Alright, in some exams, they will give you cytoplasm. Yes, the chromosomes of monerans are scattered in the cytoplasm. So, a prokaryotic cell lacks a well-defined nucleus. A prokaryotic cell also lacks a membrane-bound organelle. It lacks a membrane-bound organelle. It lacks a membrane-bound organelle. It means that there are certain organelles that are possessed by the eukaryotes, or that are found in eukaryotic cell, that are absent in prokaryotic cell. Do you understand that? So they lack a membrane-bound organelle. All right. It means that they lack ribosome. They lack lysosome. All right. They lack the Golgi bodies. All right. They also lack what is called endoplasmic reticulum. All right. One, they lack a well-defined nucleus, as seen in viruses and bacteria. Hence, you say their chromosomes or their genetic materials are found in the nucleus. Two, they lack a membrane-bound organelles. They lack ribosome, the lysosome, the Golgi bodies, the endoplasmic reticulum. Alright, so please take note of that. Also note that the prokaryotic cells are actually small in size. Alright, they range from 0.1 nanometer to 0.5, that is macrometer. They range from 0.1 macrometer to 0.5 macrometer in diameter. So this is, you see, they are very small. They are small in size. Unlike the eukaryotic cell, they are quite large in size. They are about 10 macrometer to 100 macrometer in size. You see, that is just the size of the cell, very large. But these ones, the prokaryotic cells, are very small in size. Okay, so all that I've stated as regards the prokaryotes, all right, is opposite to eukaryotes. If the prokaryote lack a well-defined nucleus, it means that the eukaryote has a well-defined nucleus. Therefore, their chromosomes are scattered in their nucleus, or their chromosomes are found in their nucleus. Please, they are not scattered. The prokaryote, their chromosomes are scattered in their nucleus, but the eukaryote, their chromosomes are not scattered. They are properly arranged in the nucleus. These ones, they are smaller in size. The eukaryotes are larger in size. Okay, the prokaryote lack a membrane-bound organelle, but the eukaryote has a membrane-bound organelle, such as ribosome, the lysosome, the Golgi bodies, the endoplasmic reticulum. So this is just the introductory part of today's class. I believe it is understood. So, what is the cell? The cell is the building blocks of living organisms. Okay, the cells are the building blocks of living organisms. They are the building blocks of living organisms, just as the atoms are the building blocks of every matter. The atoms are the building block of every matter. Then cells are the building blocks of living organisms or living things. All right. Now, that is not the meaning of the cell. The cell is defined as the basic structural, and functional unit of life. Units of what? Life. The cell is defined as a basic structural and functional unit of what? Life. That is what the cell is. But on a wider note, if you want to actually give the complete meaning, or if you want to define the cell completely, you say it is a basic structural and functional unit of the protoplasm. It is a basic structural and functional unit of the protoplasm, which is made up of the nucleus and cytoplasmic materials. Cytoplasmic materials, okay? Cytoplasmic materials. So, the basic structural and functional unit of life is called the cell. Then, on a wider note, we also say that it is a basic structural and functional unit of what? Protoplasm, which is made up of the nucleus and cytoplasmic materials. It therefore means that the protoplasm is made up of nucleus and cytoplasm. The protoplasm is made up of nucleus and cytoplasm. So the two conspicuous organelles that make up this protoplasm are the nucleus and cytoplasm. All right. On a short note, or in a nutshell, the living content of the cell is simply called protoplasm. Alright? The living content of the cell is called the protoplasm. Now, before I take the history of the cell, it is also good we understand the origin of the cell, or the origin of living things, okay? The origin of living things. Now, and with living things and organic molecules. It is believed that living things emanate from organic molecules. Alright? It is believed that living organisms or living things, they emanate, or they are formed from organic molecules. So the living things are centered to be formed from one of the most important organic molecules called what? Carbon. So carbon is the most important organic molecule that make up every living thing on earth. So we have carbon, we have all the macro and micro elements. The one that is the most important, or the one that is considered the most important, is carbon. Alright? So please note that it is very, very important. It is also believed that organic molecules existed before the cell. Living things were believed to have been formed from organic molecules, and it's also believed that organic molecules were formed before the cell. Now please, the first living thing on earth were formed from four entities. The first living thing on earth was formed from four entities. They are methane, and methane is what? CH4. Ammonia, NH3, alright, NH3, then hydrogen gas, and water vapor, hydrogen gas and water vapor. So these are the four molecules that make up living things, and we call this primordial soup. Now please, this soup, you cannot eat it. It's not consumable, right? You cannot use this soup to take Santos, no. Now, living things, the first living things is believed to have originated, or to have arisen from methane, CH4, ammonia, NH3, hydrogen gas, H2, and water vapor. So these are the molecules living things were believed to have originated from. Please take note of that. It is very, very important. Now, please, before living things are formed, or before a living thing is formed, there has to be a union, or there has to be the joining of smaller molecules to form a larger one called what? Polymer. Do you understand? In order for living organisms to be formed, or in order for a living thing to be formed, there has to be the joining of two or more smaller molecules called monomers. When monomers are joined together by a certain bond, the byproduct is always the polymer. So monomers are smaller units. While monomers are smaller units, then polymers are giant what? Molecules. So please note that it is very, very important. Also note that scientists believe that the first cell that existed, was, we are called protocells. Alright, some scientists believe that the protocells were known as the first cells that first existed, the protocells. And these cells are called membranous what? Droplets. Scientists believe that the first cells that existed were called protocells. And these protocells are called membranous what? Droplets. Membranous droplets. However, there's a limitation to this rule. Yes, the protocells were known as, they were believed to be the first cells that originated. The limitation is that these protocells lack genetic what? Materials. That is the only limitation they have. The protocells lack genetic materials. So just note that living things were believed to have originated, or they were believed to have been formed from organic molecules. A good example is what? Carbon. And carbon is one of the most important elements that every living thing comprises, okay? And the first living thing I said was formed from ammonia, methane, water vapor, and what? Hydrogen gas. Alright, before a living thing is formed, there has to be the joining of smaller molecules called monomers to produce a giant molecule called what? Polymer. And scientists also believe that the first cell that existed was called the protocell. And the protocell is called membranous what? Droplets. The only limitation to these cells is that they lack genetic materials. They lack genetic what? Materials. So please note that it is very, very important. Let us now discuss the history of the cell. We just finished the origin of the cell and that of what? Organic molecules. Okay? The history of the cell. The history of the cell. If we don't say the origin of the cell, we can also say the history of the cell. The origin of the cell, the history of the cell, they mean the same thing. They are trying to tell us how the cell was brought, okay, how the cell came into existence, and the different persons involved in the postulation of it. Now, Robert Hooke, in year 1665, was the first scientist to discover the cell. Hence, he is known as the father of the cell. Robert Hooke, in year 1665, is known as the father of the cell. He discovered the cell. That is why he was the first person to discover the cell. Hence, we say he is the father of the cell. He is the father of the cell. Okay. So, what did he do? He noticed some piece of bottles, cork, and subjected it under a compound microscope. He subjected it under a compound microscope. After being subjected under a microscope, he observed what is called structures, room, and he called the room cells. He observed the room, and this room he called cells. So he was the first to coin the word cell. However, after his own discovery, Anton van Leeuwenhoek. This name is quite long, eh? Anton van Leeuwenhoek. Anton van Leeuwenhoek now subjected this cell that Robert Hooke coined. He subjected it under a compound microscope of a higher magnification. Yeah, he subjected the cell under a compound microscope of higher magnification. Alright? When something is magnified, it is enlarged, it appears bigger. Alright, for a better view, okay? So, Anton van Leeuwenhoek subjected the cells under a compound microscope. He now noticed that there was a movement inside the cells. So he now called the cells animalcules, alright? So this was what Anton van Leeuwenhoek stated, but Robert Hooke was the first to coin the word cell. So please note that it is very, very important. Now, it does not stop there. There's a scientist named Felix Dujardin. A scientist named Felix Dujardin in year 1835, he stated that all living things were made up of cells. Alright, Felix Dujardin stated that all living things were made up of cells. Did you know what he did? He subjected the cell under a microscope. He now discovered that the cells were having some living content. The cells were having some living content in them. He called this living content sarcode. Sarcode, S-A-R-C-O-D-E. So he called the living content in the cells sarcode. So the first person to coin the word sarcode was Felix Dujardin in the year 1835. Okay. Now, after his own discovery, he has called the living content sarcode. After his own discovery, another scientist called Pockinje and von Mohr. Pockinje and von Mohr stated they now changed this sarcode to what is called protoplasm. Alright? So please note that the sarcode was named by Felix Dujardin, but it was then called protoplasm by Pockinje and von Mohr. So don't forget that. Another scientist called Matthias Kleden. He was a botanist. Matthias Kleden, he was a botanist. He stated in the year 1838, he stated that all plants were made up of cells. Of course, the study of plants is called botany, alright? Somebody who is a scientist in the field of botany is called a botanist, okay? So he stated that all plants were made up of cells in the year 1838, alright? He was a botanist. Then, the following year, a scientist called Theodor Schwann, in the year 1839, stated that all animals were made up of cells. Hence, you call him a zoologist. All right. In year 1839, Theodor Schwann stated that all animals were made up of cells. Please note that. Please, another scientist called Rudolf von Virchow. stated that the cell comes from pre-existing cells. Stated that the cell comes from pre-existing cell. Therefore, the three scientists that were involved in postulating the cell theory are Matthias Claden, Theodor Schwann, and Rudolf von Virchow. I say it again. The three scientists that were involved in the postulation of the cell theory in year 1839 were Matthias Claden, Theodor Schwann, and Rudolf von Virchow. Now, what are the cell theory? 1. All living things are made up of cell. 2. It is the basic structural and functional unit of life. 3. Apart from the life of cell, there is no other life. 4. The cell comes from pre-existing cell. The 5. Some organisms could have one cell. Now, these organisms we call unicellular organisms. Examples are the amoeba proteus, Paramecium caudatum, Euglena viridis, and Chlamydomonas ravalis. While some could have 2 or more cells, we say they are multicellular organisms. Examples are Spirogyra, mammals, Pisces, aves, and what have you, amphibians, reptiles. We are all multicellular organisms. I say it again, we have 5 cell theory. They are 1. All living things are made up of cell. 2. The cell is a basic structural and functional unit of life. 3. Apart from the life of cell, there is no other life. 4. The cell comes from pre-existing cell. And 5. Some organisms could have one cell. We call these guys unicellular organisms. Examples are amoeba proteus, Paramecium caudatum, Euglena viridis, and Chlamydomonas ravalis. While some could have 2 or more cells, we call these guys multicellular organisms. Let me write what I just stated on the board. The names of the organisms: amoeba proteus, alright, Paramecium caudatum, alright. You now have Euglena viridis. Now Chlamydomonas ravalis. All of these organisms are called unicellular organisms. Why? It is simply because they have just one cell. Don't forget the 3 scientists that were involved in the postulation of the cell theory in 1839 were Matthias Claden, Theodor Schwann, and Rudolf von Virchow. Don't forget what Anton van Leeuwenhoek stated. Don't forget that Felix Dujardin was the first to state that all living things were made up of cells. He coined the word sarcode, which was then called protoplasm by Pönckinger and von Mohr. Please do not forget that. Now, there's what we call the earliest cells. The earliest cells. It is believed that the earliest cells are called LUCA. The earliest cells are called LUCA. The earliest cells are called LUCA. The L stands for last, U stands for universal, C stands for common, and A stands for ancestors. Alright, so LUCA stands for that is last, universal, common, ancestors. So the first earliest cells were believed to be LUCA. Alright, and please, it was also believed that the first organisms that evolved on Earth were called bacteria. Alright, the first organisms to evolve on Earth, or the first organisms that existed, were bacteria, and they were believed to have evolved 3 billion years ago. Alright, because they existed, or because they came into existence 3 billion years ago, Alright, we now call them ancestors. Ancestors, okay? We now call them ancestors because they existed about 3 billion years ago. So please don't forget what we just treated. Now, if I may ask, what is the smallest cell? What is the smallest cell? Or what are the smallest organisms on Earth? What are the smallest organisms on Earth? The smallest organisms on Earth are called mycoplasma. Yeah, the smallest organisms on Earth are called mycoplasma. The full name is Mycoplasma gallisepticum. Mycoplasma gallisepticum is believed to be the smallest organisms on Earth, and these organisms they are capable of invading the cells and tissues of plants. Okay. Now the yellowing of leaves, all right. Stunted growth, yellowing of leaves, stunted growth, and coiling leaves. All of these are caused by Mycoplasma gallisepticum. Alright, so the smallest organisms on Earth are mycoplasmas. Mycoplasma gallisepticum. However, another name for the mycoplasma, alright, is called PPLO. Alright, what is the full meaning of PPLO? Pneumonia-like organisms. The smallest organisms on Earth are called mycoplasma, otherwise called PPLO. That is pneumonia-like organisms. Alright, that's Mycoplasma gallisepticum. Alright, they are believed to cause yellowing of leaves, stunted growth, and coiling leaves in plants. So, I believe all that I've stated you have comprehended. So let us jump into the next phase of the class. Now, we said that the cells are the living content, or the cells are the basic and structural unit of life. They are the building blocks of all living things on Earth. Alright, just as the atoms are the building blocks of a matter, alright, or of an element, so do we say that the cells are the building blocks of living organisms. And these building blocks of living organisms, which are the cells are also made up of what is called organelles. Alright, organelles of the cell. So I'm going to list out the organelles of the cell. Then in our next class, we are going to be looking at the meaning of each organelle. Alright? Number 1, nucleus. Now don't forget that the nucleus is the largest organelle found in the cell. It was first described by Robert Brown. In 1883. Alright, he observed the nucleus in urchins, okay? So 2, ribosome. I'll just list them. Then in the next class, we'll look at this. 3, lysosome. 4, Golgi bodies. 5, meristem. 6, centrioles. 7, cell wall. 8, cell membrane. cell membrane. 9. Endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum, it could be rough or smooth. It is rough when ribosomes are attached. It becomes rough endoplasmic reticulum. It becomes smooth when ribosomes are not attached. So 10, we have chromosomes. 11, we have chloroplasts. 12, we have chromoplasts. 13, we have vacuoles. Please, another name for the cell membrane, I can also call it plasma. The cell membrane is also called plasma lemma or plasma membrane. Plasma lemma or plasma membrane is otherwise called cell membrane. And cell membrane is selectively permeable in function. Don't worry. In our next class, we are going to be looking at the meaning of all these organelles listed on the board. Please, if you know you have learned something in today's video, endeavor to subscribe, like, share, and comment. If you don't understand or if you didn't understand anything or something on the board and you are worried about it, just drop it on the comment section. And if you know there's a topic in any course that you don't understand, just write it on the comment section. Because of you, I can shoot a video on it. So just drop your comments on the comment section. Do have a wonderful day. Please endeavor to subscribe, like, share, and comment.